Fall is here, which means book recommendations. Specifically, today we're going to talk about best murder mysteries. Also, I will be sneaking in at the end some of the worst ones that I've read because why not? It's fun. I did want to try and focus on not the same ones that you will see over and over again. Like, for example, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Is it worth it? Yes. Very good example of journalistic investigation for murder mystery, but I feel like if you've looked for murder mysteries, you've seen this one. Same thing with And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. It's been done over and over again. I personally found the writing a little tedious. To be fair, English is my second language, and I've been recommended to try her as an audiobook. I might do that, but you've heard of those. So I tried to also include some recommendations that would fit for about everyone, a little bit of everything, a lot of cozy murder mysteries, because I've noticed that they work for me, and I feel like during the fall, I want that a little bit more. Obviously, would love to get your own recommendations in comment section because I'm always looking for more, so let's get to it. The first book is definitely something that has been getting some hype, but I approve, so let's give it some more, and it is Bright Young Women. If you are a true crime lover, this is something that you must try. This is definitely inspired by real life events, which again, I'm not a huge true crime connoisseur, but I still was really invested. This one, you're following two different timelines. These women being murdered, think serial killer going into a sorority and murdering some women, and then you're following the justice system afterwards. And I really appreciate how the author did sneak in her own personal belief. It doesn't always work, but when you approve of the beliefs, it just tends to work better. And in this case, she was mentioning how, bright young women, that's definitely something that we've seen in real life, judges and people in authority talking about bright young men, their lives being ruined through their own actions, and the victims, who cares? So it was really interesting to see the author playing with that a little bit. So like the judge and also the female lawyer from the defendant. So I really enjoyed this book. I do think it's worth checking out if you haven't yet. Again, I'm not the biggest true crime lover, and I really enjoyed this one. So definitely check out this one. By the way, I do feel like some of these would fit in more than one category because of the way that they are. Mystery thrillers tend to kind of go together. But this one is murder mystery, but also sci-fi, and I thought I would include it in here just for sci-fi lovers that are trying to get into murder mysteries, or just mystery thrillers in general, and I do think it's worth the hype. This is Wrong Place, Wrong Time. I was a little nervous to try it because I had been burned a few times with the Reese Witherspoon book club, but this one, the premise was definitely right up my alley because yes, it's a murder mystery, but also a time loop, which I'm a big fan. I do think that in general, time loops are difficult to end, but I thought this one was done well, so there's that. Main female character, she is a mother, she's married, and her son on his 18th birthday, she's watching him walking back home late at night, and then she sees him murder someone, which is not something she would have expected from him because he's just such a good kid. So then she keeps waking up, going back in time, and she's trying to figure out what happened, what did she miss, what's going on, and I really enjoyed this. I did call this a few times like a mom read, and it's because there are a few jokes that are like mom jokes, and I've called it the book's dad read, so I feel like it just balanced things out. But if you have yet to pick this up, I do think this is a great book to buddy read. I do approve that it's part of a book club. I do think this would be a great book club book, and I really enjoyed this. So, I mean, there's a million posted in there. I did truly think it was worth the hype, so I would definitely recommend this one if you want to get into a bit more of sci-fi for a mystery thriller. I've definitely raved about this book before, but I do think that it fits really well in this video because yes, it is a murder mystery, but also dark academia and it's fall, so like absolutely if we were villains. So I do think there's a bunch of books that are similar-ish, like The Secret Circles. Oh my gosh, The Secret Circle was actually a really good TV show that got cancelled. The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which super popular, really well known. This one is a little bit more underrated. You're still following these very snobbish characters that are in university, but this time they are theater kids that are trying to study and learn Shakespeare plays, which I'm not even familiar with, yet I really enjoyed this book. If you have a chance, I do think this would be a great audiobook also because they are playing these roles. So if you enjoy murder mysteries, but you want more of like the vibes, this is definitely going to be more your cup of tea, a little bit more literary fiction than some of the other ones that are more like popcorn reads. So this one is also something that I would recommend. a little different. Speaking of different, I wanted to include murder mysteries that have different formats because we want to include some things that are a little bit more different than everything else. And the first one I wanted to mention is Missing Girls by Megan Miranda. She tends to write murder mystery in small towns. And this is the first book that I read by her. And I got hooked because this one is told backward, which I feel like could be so hit and miss, but this time it just really works. So you get the beginning, and then you are fast forwarded 2 weeks later, and then you go 15 days, 14 days, and then keep going back and trying to figure out what happened. So I do recommend this one. Is it a little gimmicky? Yes, but I feel like sometimes it just works, and this is definitely right there for me. Another one that I just finished that is definitely a different concept would be The Appeal, which I was not sure how I was going to feel about this one. I knew this was a murder mystery, and I thought this was like a lock room, and it kind of is, but you have no idea what's going on for like half the book, okay? So I'm going to give you a little bit of context. I do feel like it helps enjoy the book more, but you have these two people, these two women who are given a ton of data, which you're also going to go through, and it's a bunch of emails and text messages, and they have to figure out what happened. They don't even realize that there's a murder, which it's not a spoiler. I mean, murder mystery, it says so on the front, but it doesn't happen until like midpoint that you figure out, oh, that's what's going on. So until then, all you get is a bunch of emails and text messages between these people that are all part of this theater troupe. And the granddaughter of two of these people is sick from a rare kind of cancer, and they're trying to raise money, and a murder will happen and it has to be one of them kind of situation. So the whole book, like 99% of the book, is all emails and messages of them trying to figure out what happened, and so will you while you go through it. I did enjoy this. I do feel like some parts were a little repetitive because they're trying to compile all of these, like summarize all the data, which I feel like if you've went through and actually read everything, you don't really need, because you kind of make those own assumptions yourself. But if you missed anything, I do think it's still helpful, and you get to the end and figure out what happened to whoever is murdered. And it's funny because you definitely form an opinion on each character through those messages. Who's talking bad about who? You don't know, do I trust this person? Are they likable? Is it just the way other people talk about? Because you obviously don't get everyone's side of each stories. So this is definitely a different concept, a different format. If you want to try something different, this is definitely something I would recommend. I believe more books by the authors are told that way. Definitely confirm in the comment section, because there's a little bit of an extract at the end of a different book, and it seems to be like audio files. So I think she does that a lot. Let me know. But yeah, this was fun and different for sure. If you feel like every time you read a murder mystery, it's all the same thing and you want something more unique, I would recommend branching out and going for translated works. I feel like they will have different ideas than what you're used to reading. And I have these two books from a Japanese author that I have really enjoyed. You have The Devotion of Suspect X and you have Malice. So this one is a murder mystery. I mean, look at the title of this video. They're all murder mysteries. But in this one, you have these two characters who are writers, and one of them is murdered in his office, his locked office. So it has to be someone, and the other one is being arrested. And why would he be accused? You kind of get through the investigation through the eyes of the investigator who does know the accused. So there's a little bit of context there, and you piece things together. I do feel like he's arrested pretty instantly. So you're like, why? And then you get more of a story through it. And in this one, I'm not sure I can even describe what's going on in this one. You have this woman who is accused of murdering a man who, like, think domestic violence, really. She's trying to protect her daughter, and then a lot happened. I mean, a lot's going on in this one. And once again, it felt just overall very unique because I haven't read that many things that are like this. And I feel like the fact that it is a translation plays into it. I feel like I've read a ton of murder mysteries, mystery thrillers in general that are from like the US, Canada, maybe the UK. So these one felt very different. So I would just recommend in general branching out. These were good. Another one that is a little bit of a different format, I would recommend these ones specifically as audiobooks. So if that's your thing, you need to try The Night Swim, which I don't own because I got the audiobook from the library, but I do have Dark Corners, which I just recently read. I read the physical book, but again, audiobook would be great because part of the story is told in a podcast format. So really fun and different. You following this woman who does podcast, and she is a true crime fan. She starts this podcast to discuss true crimes and then goes to the small town to investigate, and there's like her own investigation happening at the same time as she's following this court case. Things happen, and in book one, you know, she becomes famous. We're going to keep that vague. And then book 2 is her participating into this investigation by the police while still running a current murder case through her podcast, and things eventually converge. And I enjoy this. I do think this makes it a bit more unique. Again, I did read a physical book, but I do think this would be fantastic to listen to as an audiobook. I feel like some books in general just play really well as audiobooks. Some really don't, but these ones definitely do. So would recommend these ones. For people that love fantasy and want to get into mystery thrillers, or the opposite, people that really love mystery thrillers but you're not really into fantasy, you might want to try them, I would recommend murder mysteries set in fantasy world. I've read a couple in a row this year and I've really been enjoying the concept. I'll put more on the screen if you want more recommendation, but my number one recommendation would be A Tainted Cup. So you're following a character who is the assistant to this woman who's a little, let's just go with special, like think Sherlock Holmes but like a little crazier, and her job is to investigate this murder, and she only sends her assistant to take notes, and I don't remember the exact sniffer. People call him like, not sniffer, the exact term, but yeah, people are calling him like, is it glass sniffer or something? Because they have those magical powers and he gets to memorize literally everything through scent. So he'll smell something in order to memorize things better, and then he just has to smell that scent again to remember everything. That came out. Jar sniffer, something like this. Anyway, so E is the one that's actually doing investigation, bringing things back to this woman, and she knows everything that's going to happen, but she's like so quirky in a funny way, and she pieces things together really interestingly. This is going to be a duology, but yes, it is a fantasy world. So there's the magical powers that some of these characters have. There's also the fact that there's this big giant wall where monsters come back every year to attack, trying to invade their country or the territory in general. And you have some political intrigue throughout all of it, which I feel like is not something that you see in mystery thrillers, but a big part of fantasy. So there's a good mix of both of these things, and I really enjoyed it. I also really liked A Master of Jinn, which is also, again, murder mystery, but in that world, it's set in the past, but a magical version of a world of Egypt. You have this brotherhood of white people, really, colonizers who are murdered through magical events, and the main character investigate, and she has to be in contact with jinns. So there's a lot to it also in this one, more complex than the average murder mystery because of the fantasy elements. And this is where we get into the crazy amount of cozy murder mysteries I've read. It's been my jam. The last 2 years, I have read a ton of them, and I really, really enjoy them. Since we're talking already about fantasy, let me include the one that is like a cozy fantasy murder mystery, which a lot together, but it works, and it is In the Company of Witches. I've been raving about this duology. I think the author was thinking about continuing this series. I do think the publisher decided, hopefully they changed their mind. Please do. Because this is a mix of Gilmore Girls, maybe a little bit of practical magic, or definitely some Sabrina the Teenage Witch, because you have the main character, she lives in a small town, so obviously gossipy people because the witches, and she has these two aunts who run a bed and breakfast. And one of them is a grumpy old woman, which we love. And she might have said that she wished that the only client that they currently had would be found. And then the next morning, shocker, she is found. So you're following the gossip of the small town, what's going on with them. They're trying to investigate, again, murder mystery, obviously. There are some darker topics, for example, the main character is going through grief, and you get a bit more of the backstory throughout the book. But even though, again, more darker elements, I feel like this felt really, really cozy, and I would highly recommend it. The second book, you get more poisons. I'm gonna keep this vague because obviously it's the second book, but again, the investigation. If you like plants, I feel like you're gonna get more into the second book. And yeah, I would continue reading more of those because they feel very, very cozy. And again, if you're going to talk about cozy murder mysteries, I feel like this is where the countryside of England comes into it and plays a big part. I feel like as soon as you add that, cozy murder mystery. So I have a list. I'm going to quickly mention some of them. The Thursday Murder Club, which is a 4-book series, I think, at this point, and you're following old people, 70s, 80s people who started this club investigating, murder mysteries for fun, and then they get sucked in an actual murder mystery investigation, and it just keeps going. So the characters are kind of quirky, they're funny, you get attached to them, you're following them through this series. Another one that is set in the countryside in England would be the Magpie Murders. I've only read the first one, but it was good. And one that I just finished is How to Solve Your Own Murder. In this one, I like the premise. You have the main character who is predicted as she is a young woman that she would be betrayed and it would be someone close, blah, blah, blah. There's a list of things and she would be murdered. So, of course, she spends her whole life trying to figure out what's going to happen, trying to dig dirt on literally everyone. And she's murdered like 60 years later. So, of course, she wasn't super well loved, trying to get everyone's secrets, trying to figure out what was going to happen. And her young relative is told that if she wants to get her money, she has to solve the murder mystery. I listened to that one as an audiobook, and it was just a pleasant one to go through. Obviously, it's a murder, but countryside, the accent, okay? It's the accent. She gets there, she doesn't know anyone, and she has to dig up the secrets of everyone, where they were, what they were doing, why would they want to kill her, and she's just piecing things together. This is actually going to be a series. There's a second book, at least, that is planned. I have no idea where this is going to go, but I enjoy this, and I feel like small town, once again, the English countryside, the accent and humor, it just ends up working out for cozy murder mysteries. So I would also recommend this one. It was fun. So these were some of the ones that I've enjoyed. A little bit of everything, a lot of cozy, because again, it's been my job. If you have more recommendations, let me know, especially if they're like fantasy, cozy murder mysteries. I want more of those for sure. I will be looking for more. I'll let you know when I find them. But I thought it would be fun to balance things out and include also some of the ones that I don't think are worth the hype. Basically, this list is going to reassure you if you also were not a fan of them. But if it's the opposite, none of the ones I've mentioned before sound appealing to you, and you've enjoyed some of the ones I will be naming, then you get more recommendations. Obviously, just because I didn't like something doesn't mean you will not like it. Because everyone's different. Like, even if I find a book really badly written, doesn't mean that you're going to feel the same. I feel like the prose can be so subjective. So here's my list. I will get salty about some of these because I really wanted to love them. I wanted them to be worth the hype, and they just really did not work for me. So in first place, we have The Silent Patient. This is so popular, and I genuinely do not understand why, because I finished this and I was like, this is it. Like, you see the twist or like the ending happening way in advance. And I never know if it's like, is it just because I make like 50 ideas in my head, so of course one of them is going to be right? Is it because I've read too many? But I genuinely did not understand why this one was popular. Didn't care for the writing. I did listen to it as an audiobook, which could play a role in there, but I didn't like the way things were portrayed. I just really not a fan. The one that I wanted to quickly mention is The Guest List, which I have never tried to like a book or tried to finish a book this badly, because I put it down 7 times. 7 times. I never do this. I have since learned to just give up on books if I'm not feeling them. But this one, I tried the ebooks, I tried the audiobook, again, in total 7 times, because it was, I believe, the winner for the Goodreads Choice Award, which I've since discovered that list just does not work for me, for at least the mystery thrillers. We don't vibe. We don't at all. And this was like super popular, but yeah, I couldn't get into it like at all. So I can't even tell you exactly what it is about because I couldn't finish it. One that I was disappointed about because I thought the premise was really fun was Killers of a Certain Age. Again, I really went through a phase where I wanted to read more about older characters, because like, you read so many, especially like fantasy books, where it's like 18-year-old with purple eyes and magical blonde hair. Like, I'm so tired of that. So I wanted to read about older characters. And this one is like a group of older women who were assassins. I think they're in their 60s. And they just retired. Basically, they were assassins for like 40 years, and they're all retiring. They go on this cruise, and then they realize someone is trying to murder them. So you're following them. And the premise is like so appealing. It's so fun. It's so different. And I just could not care. I just was not emotionally invested whatsoever. But if that sounds really appealing to you, I would give it a shot. But I found it pretty underwhelming. Another one that was extremely popular on the Goodreads Choice Award that I could not get into. I did finish it, but I just didn't care for it. The Maid. I don't understand the hype on this one, like, at all. I found the character, like, I know she's meant to be, like, on the spectrum. The author never specify, but I found her annoying in the sense that it would conveniently be turned on or off. Like, it just felt, it read weird. I didn't care for the writing. I didn't care for the premise, really. I was not emotionally invested. I didn't care for the romance, let's just put it that way. I just really didn't care, and I thought that the fact that this became a series was just a money grab, which sounds really mean, but I feel like I get it, because if a book becomes popular, write more of that. That makes sense. But when you really don't like it, it feels, maybe I'm bitter, it just feels like a money grab. So Was not for me. One that I was so sad that I didn't care for was Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone, which, like, first off, title will grab your attention, the premise in general. You have this main character who goes on this trip. I think it's a yearly family reunion, and they go into this remote place. There's a snowstorm. I love that, you know, lock room kind of murder mystery has to be someone because, again, as soon as they arrive, someone is murdered. So it has to be one of them. And since they've all murdered someone, it could be anyone kind of thing. Cool. What did not work for me was the humor. At first, I was, okay, that's cool, that's different. The tone is like a little unserious. It feels just different in general, but it got on my nerve so quickly, so quickly. I really did not see it coming. And yeah, not a fan. And when we got to the end, because like I forced myself to get there, I just didn't care anymore. So for me, that was unfortunately a flop, but it's really popular, so it might work for you. One that is probably my most disappointed book of the year because I was looking forward to this new release is The Last Murder at the End of the World, which I loved or liked the two of the books that I've read by the author. So like The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, that concept was just everything. But this one, it is a murder mystery. Yeah. It is like kind of sci-fi elements. You have this island where the remnant of humanity seems to be there after this thing happened. You don't really have the details in the beginning. You have this fog that is surrounding the island, and they know that if they don't solve the murder mystery, the fog will come and just kill all of them. So they have a specific amount of time to do it. It sounds really interesting, but I really lost interest. Like I tried, I would say about like the halfway point is where I just did not care at all anymore. I was not emotionally invested, and I found that it was a lot of like running around on the island that didn't bring anything. And again, I got to ending and I was like, okay, that's what happened. Like you get answers, but like you don't care anymore. So yeah, that was a big letdown for me. I really thought this was going to be, you know, must read, but meh. Again, seems to be unpopular from the comments I've gotten on my review on Goodreads, but it is what it is. The last thing I wanted to mention is a general category, but any book, really, but we're gonna go with murder mysteries that heavily rely on the main female character being extremely dumb or drunk. That was a theme for a while, right? After like The Girl on the Train, everyone was doing that, and I just hated it, especially if they would hold a big chunk of information. Like you're in their head, but like, oh, she conveniently never thinks for like half the book about this one thing. I can't do that. So like the alcoholic in The Woman in the Window, yeah, I was not a fan, or The House Across the Lake. Definitely has that whole like, oh, conveniently did not mention this big chunk of information while she's drunk the whole time. So yeah, in general, that category, not for me, and I feel like it's been done. It's been done. I am done. So that's it. These are some of the best murder mystery book recommendations I can give you, plus some of the ones that didn't work for me that might give you either more recommendations, who knows, or it might make you feel less alone in not liking them, or might reassure you that it's okay to skip them. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Would love to get some of yours because, you know, it's fall. It is the time for all the murder mysteries. If you enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to not miss more videos, and I will be putting more on the screen that I recommend you check out. And I'll put on the screen my September wrap up because I finished like 15 plus books. And a lot of them were mystery thrillers if you're looking for more recommendations or the ones that you should skip. And if you are in the fall mood, I would recommend, I did do a review/reading vlog where I went through the Rory Gilmore reading challenge, which was a lot of fun. So I would recommend checking that out, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.